first. Go ahead.
Good morning. Yeah.
What does the president think of Republican Senator concerns about the TikTok Oracle deal? And have you or Jared or the president been in touch with Safra Katz or Larry Ellison about it?
I don't know that Jared would have been in contact with him. I'm not aware of him being in contact with Safra or Larry Ellison. Obviously, any deal that gets made or doesn't get made is certainly one between them and TikTok. We've got to make sure that the national security interest that they're protected, and that the whole reason for banning TikTok was more from a national security standpoint than an economic one. And to look at the details of that deal, I know it was probably the number one asked question yesterday: was there a deal? Was there not a deal? But we're going to continue to review it and make sure the interest of the American people is protected.
Hey Mark, last night President Trump said during the ABC town hall that just about an hour before he learned some new information that gave him optimism that a deal could be reached on a stimulus package. What was that, and what's the latest on
Yeah, I don't want to get into my personal conversations with the president, but it's obviously a conversation that I had with him as it relates to not only the Problem Solvers Caucus proposal that I thought was very thoughtful and actually is in a way very meaningful if you're looking at Republicans and Democrats coming together in a bipartisan way to put forth something that they believe that they could actually support. They don't speak for the speaker. I think she's been very clear about that in the last 12 hours. But if it provides a foundation where there's really a desire to do a deal, we're encouraged by that. If the speaker is saying she's willing to stay in until a deal gets done, that's also another encouraging sign. And yet I've been around Congress long enough to know that promises on air don't necessarily provide real fruit behind closed doors. But I will say this, that I've had a number of conversations with Democrats on Capitol Hill, not just the Problem Solvers Caucus, but a number of others. And I think there's a growing sense that there's still some real needs that need to be addressed. And I've tried to express the willingness on behalf of the White House to hopefully address those.
What issues are you willing to give
yes, about what are the barriers right now to getting a deal done? What are you finding?
I think those are well articulated barriers. I think probably the biggest obstacle continues to be the amount of money that is outlined for state and local help. Even in the Problem Solvers Caucus initiative, it was some $500 billion, but there was a caveat there that was based on real revenue losses, and that caveat gives me hope that if we're willing to look at real facts and real losses, that hopefully we can get to something that actually makes sense. Yes.
And what issues is the administration willing to move on?
Well, I'm not going to negotiate here in front of 325 million people, but I can tell you that we've shown a great degree of flexibility, even hopefully with the supportive statements that I'm making right now as it relates to the Problem Solvers Caucus proposal. I know I've been on speed dial with Tom Reed on the Republican side, the congressman from New York. He has actually been more of the go-between between him and the Democrat colleagues that are members of the Problem Solvers group, wanting to make sure that I don't interfere with their deliberative process, but also try to give them some guidance in terms of what we see are real stumbling blocks. And the biggest stumbling block is if we use this pandemic as a bailout mechanism for poorly run states that perhaps have not been as fiscally responsible as some others. I think that would be a very difficult hurdle to overcome.
Mark, following up on last night, if we can, the president was talking about herd mentality. I'm sure he meant herd immunity, but just for clarity, he said it will
happened. So is this a strategy by the White House? And if so, how many people are you prepared to
no,
get in?
it's never been a strategy. I think that early on, I can tell you back in March when I first got here and wasn't even really sworn in as the chief of staff, there were a number of people that said that there's a couple of ways that we can look at this, and the president rightfully made the decision. We need to see if we can mitigate the damages as much as possible, provide for hospital capacity, ventilator capacity, put a fast track on therapeutics and vaccines, and that continues to be our not only our official but our unofficial tack at hitting this. I will say that there are a number of individuals that would indicate that herd immunity once that we get the antibodies, and you're already in ways, I believe, seeing that in New York City, because you have a lower contagion rate because they experience such a high drastic contagion, but they lost so many lives, and so that is not something that the White House chose to employ. It's something that we believe by not going that route saved lives, and it's why we shut down the economy. It's why we continue to work in rapid speed for vaccines. That being said, to discount the fact that there are a number of people out there that believe that ultimately this doesn't get solved until we reach that herd immunity population, even some of the the more renowned doctors have suggested that could possibly be indeed the answer.
The president said on a health care plan, he said, I don't know, I think he said it's all ready. Is what he
It
said.
is. It is
that
already.
legislation or an executive order?
Well,
If
I
it's
mean,
ready, why not roll it out if it's ready? Americans want to know how they'll be safe.
We will be rolling it out. I can tell you that
Before the election?
health care before the election. Sure, I can tell you that he's right, that it is ready. We've been making a number of not only tweaks but modifications to that.
EO or
that
legislation?
well, I think if we look at legislation, we know that nothing ever gets done in Congress. We can't even agree to a coronavirus issue. So part of why the delay is that we've had to look at what were the legislative parts of that proposal and say, let's look at the legislative side, put it over in this box. What can we do administratively? And we've had to get very, very creative with executive powers to try to figure out what we can do to substantially affect the healthcare cost and bring it down through executive action. So it's more of an executive action with a legislative component that is more visionary, but indeed I'm not as optimistic that we get Congress to come together in a bipartisan way. Part of that is that you still have a group that campaigned for getting the Affordable Care Act that still believes the Affordable Care Act is affordable. And so getting them to change their mind becomes very difficult. You cover it a lot, you know that.
Last summer, he said it would be 3 weeks away. A couple months ago, he said it was 2 weeks away. So when in particular?
So we could have put something out a few weeks ago. I think it gets very, both of those statements were accurate. I can tell you that
How are they accurate?
Well, because we were 2 weeks away of putting something out. What I wanted to do is make sure that whatever we put out didn't rely on Congress. So that's the delay, was really looking at what we can do from an administrative standpoint.
Putting it out, we just chose not to put it out.
That's correct.
So what are you
That's
looking
correct.
for
Yeah.
now, Mark?
Yeah.
On a vaccine, the president keeps suggesting that a vaccine might be weeks away. I think last night he said 3 or 4 weeks away. Nobody's saying that. So why is the president saying that?
To correct you, there are some people who are saying that. Maybe not the general populace that's saying that. Well, I've been on phone calls with individuals who have said that personally to me. I know he's been
Within 3 to 4 weeks?
in September. That's correct. We're in September. That potentially by the end of September. So that would hit that. Here's what we have: is from an optimistic standpoint, I know two things. One is with the number of trials that we currently have in place, Jeremy, we have a real hope of getting something that actually works and that the efficacy of that actually save lives. Whether that happens in 2 weeks, whether it happens in 2 months, I can tell you there's one person that sits in an Oval Office that daily is asking me how much progress have we made, where are we going, and probably is one of the most informed when it comes to where we are in the trials without hold on, let me finish, Jeremy, without actually giving specific names and affecting markets with regards to what company or what company may or may not be there. So I can't get to you in the names.
Which vaccine makers or who
it would affect markets. I'm not going to
Seems
do
like
that.
even Pfizer, which is maybe the most optimistic, are saying that they could have a vaccine, could know whether or not the vaccine will work by the end of October.
In October,
but
that's
then
correct.
They would need to seek approval from the FDA, which is a whole different ballgame.
Well, they're in clinical trials right now. As you know, Pfizer is currently in clinical trials, and so the expedited manner in which they're looking at phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials, whether it's Pfizer, and I can speak to Pfizer because I've actually talked to the Pfizer CEO. He's been public with those comments, and so I'm not saying anything different than what he shared with me in private, but they're very optimistic that they can have something by the end of October. And so worst case scenario, we're talking 6 weeks based on his personal testimony. There are others that suggest a more aggressive timeline. Listen, I've invested in pharmaceuticals at phase 3. I know that with each phase 3, until it's done and you know that it works, you don't have anything. But I do know that this is going to happen much faster, and we'll get to a yes or no on whether it works at record speed.
And let me just ask you real quick on the issue of rallies specifically. The president held this indoor rally on Sunday in Nevada.
Yeah.
Had another indoor event on Monday in Arizona. Does the campaign plan to continue to move forward with these indoor rallies? And do you feel comfortable with the fact that you're exposing people in contravention to the administration's own guidelines as it relates to crowded indoor spaces?
Well, as you know, with regards to indoor spaces or outdoor spaces, any rally is a voluntary participation. And what we see, what we see, you asked the question, let me answer it. All right. And so as we look at any of that, when we look, our first priority has been, will remain, to do the outside, what I call hangar rallies. That's the reason why we took that model, and we continue to do that. And yet, at the same time, whether they wear masks, we certainly encourage them to wear masks in those confines. And it is not our desire to put anybody at risk. And yet, this one of the things that makes America great is that you can make individual choices for yourself, and we're going to continue to do what we can to make sure that we get the president's message out.
Why
Do
did
you
the
have
president?
information about
why-
COVID, about positive cases in the White House today?
I don't comment on any health related issues as it relates to the White House ever.
Why did
See-
the president share a tweet suggesting that Joe Biden's a pedophile?
I haven't talked to him about that. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
It was
Does
a
he still
tweet.
have confidence?
I'm not sure what you're
Suggested
referring
that.
to.
I mean, do you think that Joe Biden is a pedophile?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, and I have no derogatory information other than his policies for Vice President Joe Biden.
Thank you. On the problem solvers, just want to make sure we're clear here. When the president
Is this
tweeted
what you've
about-
tweeted out?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So do you want me to correct your tweet?
No,
No,
just
go
for
ahead.
clar-
I'm sorry.
Just for clarity.
Yeah.
When he said that go for much higher numbers, was he speaking to the problem solvers amount on the stimulus, or is he open to more that can win over Nancy Pelosi?
I think that the higher numbers probably is an indication of what passed in the Senate as we look at their $500 billion plan that actually the Democrats objected to. You know, here's the interesting thing. We're talking about all of this, and yet there was at least a $500 billion package that Democrats could have said, let's at least agree on this while we continue on, and yet, once again, for the fourth time, Democrats in the Senate have said no. And so that higher number was certainly looking at some of the priorities that the president has put forth as it relates to higher numbers. I didn't specifically talk to him about that individual tweet, but we've had other discussions. I can tell you the Senate bill did not include the direct stimulus payments, the $1,200 to adults and $500 to children, that the president's a big, strong believer in.
Are Republicans
Yeah,
okay with,
One last question,
Okay.
Bill.
okay,
Yeah.
are Republicans okay with aiding the states, or is that off the table?
Well, I mean, certainly they've already passed some aid for states, and so I think it all depends on the amount of money that we have and what it goes to. And I don't pretend to speak for Republicans broadly. I'm out here hopefully talking on behalf of the White House position, but there's at least a group of Republicans on the House and in the Senate that are very able to speak for themselves.
Hey, Mark, can I ask you quickly about the education money? So the Senate bill had $105 billion. The May bill that the House passed had $100 billion. Pelosi and Schumer now want $400 billion. The problem solvers has got $100 billion. Going to be able to reconcile that disparity?
Well, the $400 billion that Speaker Pelosi talked about, I've not seen that in a piece of legislation that's passed or even in
you've
her.
heard it in
But I've heard it.
Yeah.
I've heard it. It actually, when we thought we were meeting the Democrats' demand, they asked for $100 billion. We put forth $105 billion, and then all of a sudden they said, "Oh no! We actually, it wasn't really $100 billion. It was $400 billion." That's the kind of moving the goalpost that has been very frustrating. The number that the Problem Solvers Caucus put out, which is higher than the White House proposal, but certainly is something that's worth consideration based on the needs that are out there, and based on the fact that our school teachers and students continue to suffer in a non-traditional environment in trying to learn.
The President still has confidence in Secretary Azar. You heard Chuck Schumer on that. Does the President still have confidence on Secretary Azar?
Why would that question even come up?
Chuck Schumer said he should.
Well, Chuck Schumer's talking about something that he obviously doesn't know about. I was on the phone 3 times last night with Secretary Azar. He still has complete confidence of the President of the United States. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Timeline for